Hi everyone, Coach Gil here. It's Friday, so we're working on senior concepts, right? We're going to look at certain ideas, certain tactical ideas, philosophies, and a lot of fun stuff that is out there in the football world. Today, you're only a genius if you win, right? So if what you do works, right? So brief introduction, my name is Gilbert Navarro. I am a U.S. Soccer B licensed coach as well as a UEFA C licensed coach. I am a assistant coach and data analyst for a USL 2 side as well as a assistant DLC for one of the most historic clubs here in New England. So straight into it, right? So we're working with seniors. It's going to be 11 aside. Our metrics for our field is going to be 110 by 68 meters. And then we're going to be in a 4-3-3 formation. That is the most common formation used in the modern game. We are the yellow pieces, just to make that clear. This week we've been working on building out of the back, so I'll continue with that theme, right? So here's the truth, right? At the senior level, what you get rewarded for isn't just on the whiteboard, right? There's many ideas, right? There's many certain styles of play, how you can execute, right? And what we're going to focus on here is first and foremost, understanding what you need to recognize to execute your vision, okay? So first, you need to know your players, right? In this scenario, right, today we're going to be working on just the box formation, right? It's been mainly just used to, obviously overload this central area in build-up. It's obviously been very much popularized by people like Pep Guardiola, right? So we are going to work with that. So first is knowing your players. What are they capable of? In what positions, right? Are they able to understand and grasp the idea at hand at all? Second, know what you can execute, right? Know what you want to execute in that scenario, right? What is it that I want to do? In this scenario, of course, it's the box. So you want to overload a certain channel, whether it's central, out wide, in the half spaces, right? And then how do you execute it against the defense, right? So you need to recognize those three important key factors to then execute your vision, right? So who is available to you in your team? That's the first thing, right? We always answer the same 5 questions. Who, what, when, where, and why. So again, who, right? Is it going to be the fullback that's going to be inverting, right, in your team, right? Are they technically capable of playing this role as a pivot, as a false fullback? Is it going to be your center back who's going to go into the midfield, right? Right? Is it going to be potentially a winger that just drops in here, right? There's many different ways to execute this vision. So you have to identify who is your player that's going to start, right? That's going to essentially help create this vision come true. Identify that, okay? What structure do you want to achieve, right? So in this scenario that we're looking at, again, we're looking at the box formation, right? What is the purpose of it, right? It's not a video on the box formation. We're using this merely as a tool to show what is it, right? An idea, right? And how to execute it. So what is it that we're trying to achieve in this moment? And that's going to be the overload in the middle, right? So it's a 3v4, right here in the middle, unless these guys invert and you're creating space out wide, right? For this guy to drop in, or this guy to push up, right? So, right, what is it that you want to achieve? And throughout this video, now we're going to start exploring when do you want to achieve it, right? Is it going to be a high press? Is it going to be a low block, right? When, in what moment, right, do you want to achieve this? And to be more specific towards the phase of the game, we're building out of the back, right, from a restart with the goalkeeper, okay? Where, we've already established that in our own half. And why? And that's probably the most important piece. A lot of times I see coaches looking for a certain style, but I don't really think, in my opinion, they ask themselves why, right? I think we've all played under a coach that is obsessed with tiki-taka, and then they try to execute it, and they are essentially now the victim of their own idea because the team is just unable to execute it. So why do we want this to be established, right? For the sake of it, or does it have a real value that can be provided in the game, right? That for your team in that moment, okay? So let's start looking at a little bit of variations, right? So we're looking at your midfield box, right? What is it that you are trying to execute. Again, in this moment, an overload. Okay, right? Let's just use the most common overload, right? Inverted fullback, back three, right? Now this man has to make a decision. This man has to make a decision. This man makes a decision, right? And this guy typically is going to be open, right? That's the idea. You're going to have one man that stays open. Now you're starting to see teams that are looking to cut off this channel more often, right? So you'll see more shapes like this, okay? So in this moment, right, it's still technically a high press man marking system, right? It's high pressure, but the idea doesn't work anymore. And that's the importance of now identifying and looking at your defense, adapting your tactic to the game, right? In this scenario, right, the press is baiting me, right? Baiting me to make a pass into the middle. Now, this is what I'm saying. You're only a genius if what you think is the best idea works. For example, in my opinion, if I'm trying to use a box formation and I know that they're expecting, right, to cut off the central channel, then I just wouldn't use the central channel, honestly. I would just probably say, hey, we're going to overload, look at the defense, which team, right, in my analysis pre-game, which side typically receives less pressure, right? And use that to our advantage. So let's say, for example, I would go up and look at the fullback and say this left back on the opposing team doesn't press quick, is second to the ball, right? So then I might say, okay, instead of having my fullback invert, how about I get one of these guys, right? And now we have a box over here, right? And then this guy's able to come in and maybe drift inside. Maybe the 10's able to drift inside, right? That's more of a relationist principle, right? The relationship that the players have with the ball, but you're still executing this box, right? This is going to bring pressure. This guy's either going to have to come in, they're going to have to shift, right? That creates a shift over here, right? There's space, right? That's being made because of the movement the defense has to do to cover, right? So that we've now involved a completely different player, either a fullback, right? Or let's say potentially, right? Let's say 6 here and your center back goes here, right? A ball playing center back, right? It's only a dumb idea if you don't know the reason why you're executing it, right? I might say this guy's just better on the ball than my midfielder, you know, as a 6, right? Maybe I want my 8 because he's better at attacking the spaces in behind. I want him higher, right? Or maybe I want him drifting and this 10 to come in here, right? It looks silly. It looks silly, but in reality, I think, especially here in the States, it's very rigid. The mentality is very rigid. There's a certain style of play that is really forced upon everyone. And that the idea is that if you go against that grain, you're seen as very strange. You're seen as unorthodox, right? And I think that's normal. It's perfectly fine. I think it's just something that isn't explored too often in football here in the U.S., right? Now, that's against a high pressing system, right? You want the team to shift, right? So you want that box formation to force that shift, to force that movement, to create space, because, right, the more space they have to cover, whether it's on a switch, whether it's in behind, the more distance they're going to have to go and defend, right, before they can reach you, which allows more space for your players to use to their advantage, right? So now, again, understanding the defense, understanding your players, right? Understanding what you want to execute. Let's just say, okay, right? Yeah, Mr. Coach Gill. Yeah, so what if instead of forcing you to shift, right? What if now we're like, oh, we know that we can force out the middle and we can force out wide, right? In this scenario, if we're looking at this and I do this, right? This guy's marked, the support here, right? This guy's marked over here, right? Even if, let's say, a free guy goes over, potentially this guy could step and cover, right? All right, Mr. Coach, right? What's the solution here? That's where you need to understand how to operate a defense. And I'm not talking about your own. I'm talking about the opposition, right? Using their strength to their disadvantage, right? When you're looking at the spaces, right? Obviously, all of the space is no longer in behind. No matter how hard you try, it will never be in behind, right? that box typically is going to be central or higher. Now, this is where I'm saying what you believe is going to work can work. Look at the team and then assess, how can I manipulate this defense in a way that benefits my team, right? So, pardon me. Oh man, water break. Right? In this scenario, I look at this and I say, there's no space here, but this is where I need to be. This is where my team needs to be, because they want me here, because this is the safest area for the ball to be, right? Here. I look at this and say, I want to be here, centrally, right? A box only works typically in the center, right? If you're, that's the primary concept of when it was originated, right? This box here in the middle to overload centrally. So again, that's my idea. That's what I'm looking for. How can I now put my players in a position to be successful in what my vision is? I would say, okay, actually, instead of inverting a defensive player, right? I actually don't think that's a good idea. I think that is something that is actually more detrimental. Because let's say this ball comes here, plays out to the 3, or even if the goalkeeper joins, right? Let's say if the goalkeeper joins and they're just not biting. If this comes here, then he covers, it's just gonna go back, they're gonna shift, right? It's gonna go to the other side, then they're gonna shift, and you end up in this donut, right? And that's what they want. That's what the defense is looking for. You need to think about, okay, if I wanna end up in this space, how can I create the space, right? So in this scenario, I would actually do the complete opposite. All right, I would actually invert the striker, right? So I would say, hey, actually, I want to create a box and I want you guys to play here, right? And maybe play a little higher, right? Having these boys invert in these spaces, right? Right? Because then this is going to drag out the defense, right? The defense is going to have to make a decision, right? Because no longer defensive players, right? You are now using a box with attacking players, and attacking players are typically going to be what? More skilled with their feet to being able to play through a defense. This team is now going to have to make a decision. Either stay back, right, to mark out these players in the middle. Sorry, that's the midfielders, right? Which is then going to leave space for these guys to come in, right, into these half spaces. So that's either going to force this guy to drop here, which is going to allow space for the players out wide, right? And that creates a scenario over here, right? This guy can jump, this guy can stay back. If this guy stays back, even more space. If not, if he jumps, let's say he jumps and he steps, right? He can run behind, right? Or the other version, we can have the wide player come out. If he comes out, then boom, he comes here, he can overlap, right? Ooh. You are now using this in a different way, right? You're using the box to create space in other channels, right? That's why I'm saying what you do is only genius if you know how to execute it. In this scenario, the box isn't necessarily the primary target, but it is creating disruption, right? This guy's gonna be open, so this guy has to step, so then maybe the center back has to step, right? And that's gonna create what? Space, right? You have to understand, okay, what is it that I want? What is the defense giving me? And what can I do now to disrupt them, for them to react to me, right? As human beings, naturally, we're reactionary, but we're looking to be proactive, especially when we don't have the ball, right? We have to be reactive, whether we like it or not, right? And this can be in many forms, right? Let's say I say, you know what? I actually want to be very disruptive, right? I'm demanding a lot of movement from my player. So I could say, actually, when we have the ball, when the ball is played here, I want you to push up into this space, and when he does that, I actually want you guys to switch and create that box. I want you to drop here. When he drops, you push forward, right? Because then now that's going to confuse the mark. The box is still a part of that idea, right? But it's just used in a different way to a different benefit to your team. And so obviously, what is the biggest issue with this is the risk of failure. Right, I'm essentially saying the box formation can be either the key component or it can be the secondary component to assist in your build-up, right? But what is the risk, right? If I'm saying, oh, actually, this box isn't my key factor here, I'm using it to create space to overload on the wings or in the half spaces in behind, but then my players aren't able to execute it and we lose the ball and we get countered, right? I look dumb. I look silly, right? That's why you need to understand what your players are capable of as well, right? This can be done in so many different variations all over the field, right? Let's go back to our 3 for a quick second, right? This can be done in so many different variations, right? Like you could have the center back push up, right? You can have, even in this scenario, if you feel like it's better for the team, let's say you know that these defenders are very solid, you want them to move, maybe you want, right, the 9 to drop and these fullbacks to push up, maybe have these guys play the half spaces, right? Risk is the most important part of the game. And you will always look ineffective, you will always look silly, you will always look like unorthodox if you don't take a risk, but people will only give you credit if it succeeds. So that's why do it anyways. Take the risk, right? Have fun with it, right? I've had teams where I personally don't use a box formation, but I've seen teams that, for example, in this past playoffs, we played a team that did exactly that. They inverted their 9, then they would bring out their wingers over here, they would push up their fullbacks like this, right? So then, right, their idea, their structure was this, right? They wanted to have a box in the middle. We were playing 4-2-3-1, right? That was their idea, right? Against us was to have a box in the middle to force the gravity, right, of those two players, right? Which then allowed the fullbacks or the wingers to link up in these diamonds, right, out wide. So you can literally do anything if you understand your team, what it is that you're looking to do, and what the defense is giving you, right? That's the key component here. You can do anything in this game, absolutely anything. And the only time people think you're a genius is if it works. So do it anyways, right? And take that risk, right? Final notes. Being a genius, in my opinion, isn't about the idea. It's about, are you able to execute, right? And obviously the game is very based off of situations, right? You can take a poor situation and make it amazing, and you can have managers who go to amazing situations and they make it poor, right? But it really is about those key components. What is it that you're looking for? How do you execute it? And how can you use your players to your advantage, right? Other than that, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Coach Gill, I'll see you on the next one. If you're seeing this, it means you've reached the end of the video. So first of all, thank you so much. Second, the journey does not end here, not for me at least, right? So I'm looking to get back into university. If you would like to be a part of that journey and contribute, please check out some of the links down below. And if not, that's perfectly fine, right? The whole purpose of this channel was to make sure that I can give away all my knowledge for free, and you can take this in your own environments and raise the level of the game all over the world. So again, thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode.